This is Pop Culture Yearbook. Hello, and thank you for listening. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year, and we then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I am Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And we are continuing our special summer vacation series tonight with Christmas Vacation.
Great summer vacation movie.
Oh, yes. Christmas in July, baby. We have discussed Vacation, and we even took the time to watch and discuss European Vacation. Dave got his moment to do that, and he's gone again. So
yeah, he's been terminated.
Yes. He served his purpose, and he's gone.
Did he, though?
He served a purpose.
Yeah.
All right.
Filling 1 week of what we needed for this agenda.
Yeah, we're kind of taking turns here. So I ran the first one. Dave was in charge of that other one. So Gift, tonight you're going to lead us through Christmas Vacation. So yes. I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy.
Well, thanks, Brad. Glad to be here again today to discuss this amazing movie. If you guys listen to our 89 episodes, I believe Christmas Vacation was a couple of our number one movies for 1989.
I believe it was mine.
Yeah, I know it was
Roadhouse.
Probably yours too.
Yeah. So Christmas Vacation, the third installment, and I believe the final installment of the National Lampoon version.
Well, let me fact check you there. I believe. So there's a Christmas Vacation 2?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But it's actually a National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation 2. So, unfortunately, there is another one.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know.
Well, I don't think I'll be checking that.
It's called Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure or something like that. I have never seen it, and I never will.
So, hold on. Can I stop you right there for a second?
Please do.
National Lampoon. That was like a magazine, right? I'm not even that familiar with it. I wasn't
back in the day.
Right. And so they just because they were based on short stories from that magazine. That's why it's called National Lampoon's Vacation and Christmas Vacation.
No, it started with Animal House. It was the group of writers that worked for that magazine that created Animal House, and so it came from them. And then I guess I don't know.
And then they also had a radio show. National Lampoon had a radio show. Belushi was on that.
Okay. I wasn't ever, I guess I'd never given it much thought. I'd never been that familiar with National Lampoon other than these movies. It's just National Lampoon's Vacation or whatever.
Animal House came from that. I guess I don't know why Vacation is one, how it fits into that. I've never really
because
it's not written by the same guys or anything. What?
Vacation was based on Vacation 58. That was written by Hughes and appeared in National Lampoon Vacation as a short story.
Oh, it was in there.
Yes, and
right.
This movie was written by Hughes again, and he was based on his Vacation 59 short story.
Yes,
Christmas 59 is what. Yeah. Go on.
So anyway, we'll jump in here. I got a little bit of an agenda that we're going to go through, and it's going to follow a lot of the same stuff that we did under the Vacation movies. So we're going to start off, and we're all going to share a very hopefully fun and warm-hearted story of Christmas. What Christmas memory we may have.
Love Christmas.
Would anybody like to go first?
Yeah, I got a couple actually, if you don't mind. Unless there's some kind of limit on how many stories that I can tell. But
Christmas is
the first one I got one.
Seconds, Pete.
All right.
Clock is ticking.
Well, if you just shut up and let me talk. I got one from my childhood and another one from when I was an adult. So first one that comes to mind, when I was a kid, I remember, how you just remember the one gift you got as a kid that just stands out among all the others. The best gift that I got was the Dukes of Hazzard big wheel. You remember the big wheel?
I had that same one.
I had that.
And I just remember it was this huge box that was Santa brought it. It was by the stockings by the fireplace that morning on Christmas morning, and got to open it, and then of course, it's winter, so you got to wait 6 months before you can actually use it. But but we had a gravel driveway because we lived on a farm, and so it was perfect for it because you could do the skids and everything. Didn't usually work out very well, but when it did, it was fun. So that's just the one gift that really stands out for me as a kid. Now, the other Christmas memory that I have from when I was an adult is it was one July 4th when just a few years ago when we went to Lake Okoboji, my wife and kids and I, and also some of my wife's family. But we went to Arnold's Park, if you're familiar with that. This is a small amusement park in Iowa, like an old amusement park.
Our podcast Synergy, Pete, you referenced this place when we
Yes.
talked about the way back because the water park in the movie was similar to
That's
Okoboji.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I listened
circle,
to you.
baby.
But thank you. I had forgotten about that. But they have at Arnold's Park, or right outside of it, they have an Iowa Rock and Roll Music Hall of Fame. And it's like when you think of Iowa, you don't necessarily think of rock and roll music, but there's a lot of really cool history actually when you think about like Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper and Richie Valens. They died in Iowa just right after performing at a show there. But they had a Hall of Fame and museum, and I'm just kind of thumbing through one of the souvenir books, and it had an archive of all the artists that had recorded there. And I came across my dad's name. It had, like, I came across the page, Mervyn Peterson, and it also had some of the other work that he did. It was the Drifters. He was in a band called the Drifters and everything. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. So I bought it. And I was thinking, Jenny, I'm going to buy this for Christmas. And I bought it as, $20 or whatever. Held on to it till Christmas, gave it to him. And this is when my dad's health was starting to go downhill a little bit. It was about I guess it must have been 4 or 5 years ago, when he had some heart issues, right? And but when he opened it, I just remember he just broke down in tears because it just brought back all of the memories for him. He performed from 1970 to 1980. He was in his various bands. It was actually pretty big in our part of the state. And but then in 1980, he just hung it up and never really talked about it, never really performed. Occasionally, once in a really, really great while, we'd ask him to get the guitar out and he could play it, and he was good and everything. He just didn't like to, I don't know, he just didn't like the attention or something, or he didn't want to do it. But you really had to twist his arm, but it was fun when he did. So just that book, and I still have it now. I should have showed it to you. I have it downstairs, but
I want to see that sometime. That story is awesome.
Yeah.
And actually, that's again, you referenced that also on that same podcast episode. And if people have skipped around and missed it, they can hear Merv and sing. We switched the outro and intro music during that way back episode.
Yeah, it was a 42.
You got his music in there, and that was pretty cool.
That's correct. There you go. That's my story.
Oh, you're all done.
Wonderful.
Yeah, or my 20 seconds. I figured my 28 seconds must be up by now, so we'll turn it back over to Brad.
So
I did.
All right, I'll go next because it probably makes sense for Gifford to go last and transition. So I don't have as much of a specific memory. I do, though. I had that same big wheel. I think I know I had a big wheel. I assume it was Dukes of Hazzard. But one of the gifts that I remember totally getting around that age was I got, and I don't know if it was like a Boss Hog thing or what, but it had like a CB and a cowboy hat and a belt and like a vest, and it was this whole Dukes of Hazzard getup.
Everything you're
looking at it, I feel like it must have been a Boss Hog thing, which is like, why would you want that? But I totally remember that gift. I was like, I don't know, 6, 7 years old when I got that.
By the way, it's a Dukes of Hazzard theme here tonight, apparently. Wasn't expecting that. By the way, just a disclaimer, in no way, shape, or form do we endorse the Confederate flag on any merchandise. Anyway, moving on.
I am a huge Christmas guy. I have been my whole life. And I just, mostly my memories are just big family get-togethers. And so when I was a kid, we would travel or people would come to our house. But we lived on a farm too, and we had this nice big farmhouse. And I mean, tons of people from the family would come out different years. But we also went to Des Moines, where I had two aunts and uncles that lived in Des Moines, or Sioux Falls, where my other aunt and uncle lived. And those would be like our normal trips for holidays. And I loved going to those places. So my aunt and uncle's house in Des Moines, that was like my dream house. It's like this L-shaped rambler. It's actually a little bit similar to my current house that I moved into. Um, but it's this really cool layout, and I loved it my whole life. And they custom built it, and they had tons of money. I mean, they could do whatever they wanted. Um, but it was such a cool place to go visit. He even had in the basement. So he used to be a golf pro, and even had the cement poured at little angles, and he had three cups in the basement floor, and so like you could putt on the carpet, and there was even some break in there involved. It was the coolest place. So I loved going there. And one year we went there, and so my dad's side of the family, which that is, it's much bigger, and everybody was there. And I remember walking in, and I can still picture pictures of us all in like our coats, either coming or going to that time. But they had this big tag board up, and it was set up like a hotel, and they had like everybody assigned to different rooms and things, and it was all just for fun. But as a kid, I just thought that was so cool. And I just love spending those times with them. And one of the gifts I do remember getting that year in Des Moines, Santa brought me a Vikings NFL huddle. Remember those things?
Mhm.
Not really stuffed animals, but like a little like soft figurine, and they were called NFL huddles. And I remember getting that there. That was fun. My aunt and uncle's house in Sioux Falls was also fun, and one of the things I loved about that is they were my godparents, and they always gave me a gift because of that. And like my brother and sister didn't get a gift, and so that was always like a source of jealousy and something that I just loved. I couldn't wait to go because I got to get something, and they didn't. And I loved them anyway. I used to spend like weeks, like a week at a time in the summer there too with them. So I loved going there. One of the ones I do remember there, we brought up on this before. The Vikings played on a Christmas night one year and beat the Bengals in the division. And Davis talked about that game on here, and he went to that game. But I remember we were there, and we stayed through the night on Christmas and watched a game there. It's just something I remember. The Christmas Eve is always the best. We always went to church. We had amazing meals. My grandma on my dad's side was this amazing cook. My mom's an amazing cook. We did our presents on Christmas Eve. We've changed that into my wife grew up with the Christmas morning thing, so that's what we do with my kids. But I always loved Christmas Eve. That's when we did all the fun stuff. Christmas Day was fun, but it was more just like hanging out and playing games and things. And Christmas Eve was just a magic time. And one of the reasons why I love this movie so much is because I find it so relatable. The way they celebrated in this movie is very similar,
Right.
minus all the chaos.
Yeah.
Very similar to
there's
the
sometimes
types of celebrations that we had in our family and that I still strive to have as an adult.
Can I throw just one extra nugget in here because you
done.
made me think of it
Before
we get to Gifford? But you mentioned the Christmas Eve services, which I went to the same services that you did, and the drummer on our show, the Preacher Row band that we play for the intro and the outro, a very good friend of ours. He and his brother used to do the most perfect rendition of "Oh Holy Night" every Christmas Eve service, and it was just
Glad you brought
amazing.
that up because that is one of my best memories is those two singing that song.
Yes, we should get that. We could get them for Christmas. Maybe we can get them on this podcast and
you should
redo
have
it
that
for
for
us.
the outro, Pete.
Well, that can be
There
our
you go.
Christmas
It
special
could be the
in December.
Christmas special. Yes.
And except there was
On-air
that
production
one
meeting.
year where those two screwed it up and decided to sing "Go Tell It on the Mountain" instead of "A Holy Night."
Geez.
That did not.
Boo.
Did you guys boo him?
Boo. That could be the outro music.
All right, there you go. I think
right,
now
Chris.
you can speak, Gifford.
All right, excellent. So Christmas growing up was always such a special time. I would always help Mom decorate the house. We never did anything on the exterior. We didn't have 250,000 Italian twinkle lights, coating our house. But we'd always get a real tree. Back then, and of course, real trees, so you had to string your own lights. And I remember stringing the lights out on the living room carpet and checking each one to make sure they all worked, because those strings of lights only work if every light works. And just decorating the tree and just everything that went along with that was so much fun. Having like Bing Crosby on, or Frank Sinatra, music playing while we're doing that, and hot cocoa. And it was just always so wonderful. And of course, at your Christmas with just your folks, your family, that's where you always got the cool presents, of course. So for me, I remember one year I got Optimus Prime. That was a big one.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I got
Same.
Metroplex one year, which was
I
a
did have
really
that.
big transformer. The three things I was into was He-Man, uh, Transformers, and Legos. And usually you get a big one of those every year for Christmas.
Yeah,
But when I really think back to Christmas, the best memories I have are going to my dad's side or my mom's side. They both come from large families. There's 6 kids in each family, so lots of uncles and aunts and a ton of cousins. And on my mom's side in particular, they lived further away. I had cousins in Rochester, Billings, Montana, Elk River, Lakeville, and then another set that weren't too far away. But that was kind of one of the big times a year you got to see everybody, and they all came together, and we'd meet at grandma's, and the food was always amazing. And it wasn't about the presents, because you get a little something, but it wasn't any big deal. It was just getting to see your cousins, getting to see the uncles and aunts, which was just so much fun. On my dad's side of the family, my grandma was a caterer, and so she was an amazing cook. And every year she would do a goose, and we'd have the oyster soup, which I never was a fan of, but I just remember that was one of the big traditions, was to
we
have
had
the
goose too.
soup.
That was always a Christmas thing.
Yeah, and
Really?
it was
Yeah.
just amazing.
I don't think we ever had goose.
My mom,
It was
and
always
sometimes I
ham.
think we had goose and turkey, and now it's switched to
Right.
turkey usually. But I remember having goose, and it was okay, but it definitely wasn't like my favorite.
Sure, sure. But yeah, so those are a couple of big memories. It's just the big family get-togethers were always so special, and they weren't necessarily on Christmas or Christmas Day. It was whenever the most people could come in and be there. So it was usually a weekend or something like that, but they were always so much fun. One of the fun things would be when we would have to leave. So like on my mom's side, we would get there right after church, like probably around noon, and we probably wouldn't go home until 11 o'clock or midnight. But we would have to go home and milk the cows. So some of the cousins would come back with us, and because it was like a half drive to get back to our house, and they'd get to feed the calves and see how the cows were milked and stuff. And that was kind of a treat for them, because they were all city slickers. But yeah, so that was kind of cool, fun little memories from back then.
I did forget to say, you both mentioned like some of your best presents. I think the best present I ever received was when I got Nintendo. That was one of the things I was waiting for the most ever, and so excited when that day finally came. But then there was one other one that I just remember too. So when I was a sophomore in high school, we went to Florida. We went to Disney World, Universal the week before Christmas. I got to miss school. And by the way, I don't know if it still is, but that was a great time to go to Florida because the crowds are small. We had a great time. But that was like supposed to be our present. So like we weren't really going to get much for a gift when we got home. But my parents, they always pulled it off. And that was the year I got like, and it was just a 19-inch. Now it looks like nothing, but back then I got a TV, and it was such a huge surprise. And I had a dumpy old TV in my room that they let me use, but this was like an actual TV, and it's like it was such a surprise because we weren't supposed to get
State-of-the-art.
anything, and that was one of the biggest presents I ever got. And it was just like, they're so nice. They always were looking out to try to make things so great for us. So And we went through some hard times in the 80s too, but I, as a kid, never would have known it. We were
Right.
always, it was just the best.
So another one of my Christmas memories, more as an adult, is getting together to watch this film with other friends. So
Truth.
we did, I'm assuming we got together when I still lived
Yeah,
down there.
actually, well, I was just remembering, and maybe you're going to bring this up, but so Gifford moved away from us. He used to live in the Minneapolis area, but
Boo.
he now lives in Bemidji, 4 hours, 5 hours away. So we don't get to see him, which is one of the great things of this podcast. But one year you were coming home, or I don't remember if you came for a different reason, but we specifically had everybody over to see you in December, and we watched Christmas Vacation at my house. Like, it was a Christmas vacation party specifically, and it was because you were in town, and like almost everybody came, and I just remember that, and that was
trying to think of what that would have been for. We probably came down for one of Courtney's sides for their Christmas.
It was probably
away.
way back in like 2008.
Yeah.
You know, because it wasn't long after you moved, I'm sure. But
right.
Anyway, that just shows the importance of this movie, like to you and me specifically.
Right.
So.
Right, and so like when I moved up here now, my wife has one of her favorite cousins. They live very close to us up here, so we'll usually have a little Christmas with them. They've got a couple young girls. They're, what are they now? 7 and 9, I think. And so they'll come over and we'll exchange gifts, but we'll always watch this movie as the night goes on. So we always tee this one up and watch it. So that's kind of one of our Christmas traditions, is to now watch it with them since we moved away from you guys. So I was just wondering if you guys had any stories of like a tradition of watching it.
Not really a story, just the one I just brought up. But what I love about this movie, so my kids now, all our kids are older, but my kids are 15 and 13, and they love this movie. And so the first time we watched it as a family was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. They were just old enough. I think we watched the edited version that first time just because I wanted them to watch it so bad.
Mm-hmm.
But they loved it. My daughter loves this movie. And so we watch it for sure once every year as a family. And I'll watch it more. And if it's on TV, it's one of those movies that in December, I mean, if it's on TV, I will just turn it on and I will just let it play.
Just put it on a loop.
Yeah, me and my wife will maybe get sucked in. Maybe we're wrapping presents or something. So we always watch it that one time as a family, and luckily we all love it. But I'll watch it more than that too. And then like my sister's family also loves it. We're all big Christmas movie people in my family. So there was one year we went to Tyler at my mom and dad's, and we watched it on Christmas Day too. So that was fun as a whole family. The only one that doesn't really fit in is my brother. He, for some reason, doesn't really like this movie, hasn't really seen it like the rest of us. So I don't know. He's weird.
He's probably watching European Vacation with Dave.
No, I don't think that's it. So, but between my parents, my sister's family, and my family, we're all huge fans.
Sure.
Yeah, kind of the same here, is that we always have to watch it as a family ourselves. Really similar. My family doesn't love it as much. My wife likes it, but my son, he's a huge cat lover because we have 2 cats, and he just cannot stand the scene that, you know where I'm going. We'll talk about it. We'll get into it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, anyway, go on, Gifford.
We'll move into some fun facts of the movie here. I usually always like to quote the budget of the film and how much it made. So this movie had a budget of $25 million, and I believe this was the largest box office of the 4 movies. And
yes, I think I saw that too. Not by a ton, but $3
million. So definitely a success financially, as well as a fan favorite. A couple other things I found. The truck in the opening scene, that was Kurt Russell's truck from Overboard. I didn't know that before. Yeah. And I looked it up this time when Clark and Ellen are laying in bed after he brings the tree in and everything's sticking to his fingers. He's reading People magazine. So I went through and tried to find that People magazine because I was like, well, I wonder who that is on the cover. So I'm going through all these years, and I finally found out that that is the director of the movie on the cover of People magazine. So they just made up the cover for the movie, and they put him on it.
I wonder if there's a reason for that. Could they not have a real people, or did he just do it for fun, or what?
I'm guessing he did it for fun.
All right.
And then I had one other, and I'll bring this up again later. That in the scene where Clark goes off on his rant on Mr. Shirley, he used 23 terms to describe his boss, which I have written down, and I will be reading them all off in order later. And the cast members that are facing Clark, so you can't see, are wearing flashcards around their neck with just a term on it so that he could look at them and remember them and string that whole rant together. So those are a couple of mine. I didn't know if you guys had some other ones.
I do have a couple of other facts.
I have one.
So the squirrel, they had been working on training a squirrel for the famous squirrel scene for several months. It died one day before shooting, and so they had to get a totally untrained squirrel for it, and they think it actually made it better that it wasn't trained. I mean, it's bad for the squirrel that died, and it's kind of sad, but I thought that was an interesting little tidbit about it. Chevy Chase actually broke his finger while he goes on his rant while he's trying to put up the Christmas lights, and he kicks the Santa Claus. That whole scene, he broke his finger during that.
Oh yeah,
during the filming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he just kept going, so he didn't even have to break.
Yeah.
Like he just.
I love that scene. I had that written down as one of my
parts
that I like, but I've read that too, that he broke his finger.
The Mother's Day 1983 card was a nod to the original Vacation, which came out in 1983. That's why they did it that way. That's actually one of my favorite moments of the movie too.
I noticed this time too. I wondered if it was a nod. So in the opening scene, I mean, they're driving. It's not a truckster, but they're driving a station wagon. Yeah. And so I always wondered if that was maybe.
And it has the wood graining.
I always assumed that was
the family truckster.
So I like that they're driving a car like that because it fits in with the rest. And
well, the other thing, kind of on the same note, is that when he starts playing the movie in the attic, it's Xmas 59, Christmas 59, and that's what the original short story was.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Which we discussed earlier, right?
If you see in the movie, it says Christmas 55 when he's actually watching the movie.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, there's a sign in that movie he's watching that says Christmas 55. But on the reel, it says Christmas 59, and that's the nod to the short story.
Huh.
That I never really noticed, I guess.
Anyone know who the original director was supposed to be for this movie?
That's my fun fact. Chris Columbus.
And why wasn't he?
Because him and Chevy Chase just didn't like him. They didn't get along. They had some sort of rift. And Chris Columbus then obviously went on to direct John Hughes' other famous Christmas movie, Home Alone, right afterwards instead. Yeah. So it worked out for him.
I've heard a lot of people say that Chevy Chase is really difficult to work with.
Oh yeah, that's no secret.
And I saw an interview with Chris Columbus about this, and he basically said he was just a total dick. So
it sucks to hear that.
Yeah, I know it does, but it's unfortunate. I also did have written down about Christmas Vacation 2, which we've discussed a little bit. It scored 13% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really hard to do, even if you're trying. And that movie starred Dana Barron as Audrey.
Yes, she is one of the people who's
the original Audrey. Yes.
Yep.
Huh.
She's the only Griswold that's actually in it, but it's mostly about Cousin Eddie.
Is his wife in it? Like his wife from all the movies in it? Do you know?
I don't.
I don't know.
I think so, but I
Okay.
don't know that.
It's Dave's second favorite vacation movie. I know that. No.
Right.
So speaking of the director too, so Chris Columbus went on and did obviously something huge. The guy that they picked his name was like Jeremiah Chekik, and
Yep.
he
Mhm.
this is like his first movie, and he went on to he's directed a lot of stuff, especially TV shows, but like very little comedy. And so I just find it really interesting that this kind of unknown guy came in and put together this just awesome classic. And watching it this time, I'll probably bring it up as we go. But there's a lot of stuff specifically about the way the movie's directed that I just love. And it's part of why I love the movie so much is the way that they put it together. And as the director, he's got to be the most responsible for those things that I noticed. So
Sure.
A fun fact I read about him: he had never seen either of the first Vacation movies when he made
he's like
Christmas
just out of the
Vacation.
blue. It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's kind of crazy. Todd
So-
and Margot's house. So
Yeah.
you brought up the point of the truck from Overboard. Todd and
Mhm.
Margot's house is Danny Glover's house in Lethal Weapon.
Yep.
It's the same house.
Yes.
Another fun fact: Mae Questel, who played Aunt Bethany, my
He is
favorite
the voice
character,
of Betty Boop.
is the voice of Betty Boop. That's correct.
Sorry, I had that one too.
And wasn't this her last movie?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did read that.
Speaking
Who
of
was-
that, that kind of ties into one of the. I just wrote down the cast of this movie
Yeah.
and how there's so many people in it that and a lot of them maybe weren't big at the time, but so you had the voice of Betty Boop in it. Margot is Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who
Yep.
like 1 year later takes off on Seinfeld.
Mhm.
Doris Roberts is one of the moms who goes on to Everybody Loves Raymond. Obviously, both kids. Johnny Galecki becomes the Big Bang Theory, and Juliette Lewis, right after this, became a big star, the Cape Fear. Brian Dolan Murray's in it again. We talked about how
Yep.
great he was before. And even like his coworker. You know who that guy is?
Yeah. It's
Bing!
Chandler Bing's boss.
Yeah.
I don't even know his name, but every time I see that guy, the first thing I think of is Bing.
Yep.
And it's
Slapped
such a
him on
cool
the ass.
cast, and it's all these people you recognize now.
Right.
When you first saw it, you maybe wouldn't have known most of them, or
Right.
barely knew them. But
Mhm.
it turned into such a great cast, which is another reason I think why the movie's so great. It just everybody made it. It's awesome.
So there was another nod to the original Vacation movie in this movie, when Clark and Ellen are talking about how Eddie isn't going to have anything for his kids at Christmas, and Clark says, "Well, how can that be?" And Ellen said, "Well, he's been out of work for close to 7 years." In the first movie, which was almost 7 years before, so it would have been about 6.5 years before.
6 years.
Eddie makes the comment. I know, but it was summer of '83.
Oh
not
yeah, true.
summer
If
of
you really put the
89.
timeline, yeah.
Eddie makes the comment that he just got laid off from the asbestos factory. So he hasn't had a job the entire span of the Christmas.
Because the
time.
government said the plate in his head wasn't big enough.
He's holding out for a management position.
And he's holding out for a management position.
Speaking of cousin Eddie, who
Yes.
is Randy Quaid's third cousin who also had a tie into the movie?
I do not know this.
Somebody that arguably is more famous than Randy Quaid.
Well,
Certainly from a longer time ago, more famous.
You either need to tell us or give us a clue. And
The
move on.
suspense is killing me.
It's Gene Autry, who
and he sings "Here Comes Santa
he
Claus."
sings Here Comes Santa Claus when they're during the police raid.
And I love that they have that underneath all these guys coming towards the house. And every single time I hear that song, that's all I picture in my head.
Exactly.
Is the SWAT team coming in. And by the way, this is the Griswolds' second encounter with a SWAT team,
Yes.
because they had the first
Yeah.
one in the Vacation.
Well, and again, this
She
movie,
says that this is their family's first kidnapping, which wasn't even true.
No, because John Candy was the first kidnapped victim.
Right.
But that was a callback to when she told Candy, "This is our family's first gun."
again, how
Oh, yes.
terrible European Vacation was. This movie is its own movie, but there are so many things in it that are similar to or just basic blatant follow-ups on the original Vacation, just like
Yeah.
like Clark's going crazy scene and the SWAT team and like the kidnapping and the car, and those two movies go together so well, and it's, other than the kids being different, everything just fits together so great as
Yeah.
one follows up on the other.
Just
Well,
one
and of course
last
you.
fact.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Pete. No,
No,
you're good.
the last fact that I had here was that the point where Ellen grabs Clark's balls during the police raid, that was totally improv. That was not planned at all.
And they only
Or
did
part
one
of the
take
original
of that,
script. Yeah.
Right.
but that's the one they used.
And he handled it perfectly. The whole situation was handled perfectly. Couldn't have been better.
So that is a nice lead in to our next topic of your favorite gag in the movie. Not necessarily a scene, but just like a funny little thing. So, Ellen with her hand on her husband's crotch is, when they're told to freeze.
I have a lot of these. But before we do this, can I just say one other thing? I should have said this when you said who do you watch it with and everything.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, so I usually watch it multiple times a year, but it's always, during the Christmas season. So, but this year was different, and it's June when I'm watching this. The second it came on and that little song started playing in the credits, I just got such a good feeling. I got so excited to watch it, and I didn't know if I wouldn't like it as much, or if it wouldn't seem right to watch it now. But it was I'm like, I am in. This is going to be so great.
Yeah.
So, sorry, favorite gigs.
Well, why don't you kick us off with your favorite gag there, Brad? Or
Okay.
some
Well,
of them.
I have a lot of them.
Yes.
Many of them are the physical gags. So I'll just kind of try to run through these quick, and I'll probably pick a few that you're going to say, but I'm sure you'll have more to add on. One of them early on that I love the sap on his hands when they're in bed.
Yes, that's
what I love how he can't turn the pages, but then he grabs her hair, he grabs the lamp. It's just
the whole lamp
it's
just
so
falls
perfect.
apart.
He's so good. Give that man an Oscar.
His arms are just crossed.
I love that. He plays it off so perfectly. The other one that is just obvious, but it's the part that probably makes me laugh the most every time I watch it, is the scene with the ladder.
Yes,
when he's
that's
outside.
my favorite.
From the first part where
it
just goes straight down and he just drops down, then he turns his head and looks around.
Nobody saw him. Keep going.
And then the next time where it goes backwards and he pushes back off the tree, and then the arm goes through and back and through. and
that part right there, that is totally me. That's what I related to the most.
That's probably my favorite gag of the entire movie, is him moving his hand back and forth through the ladder there. It's perfect. And one thing I noticed this time that I never noticed before is that he tries to reach over and grab his sleeve too, that's hanging from the staple.
He checks the sleeve. That's what puts it over the top for me.
I've never noticed that. And now
checks it a little bit, like, oh yeah. I owned that shirt. I had that exact shirt I think it was in high school or college, and I wish I still had it.
I love the attic scene. The part with the boards where they hit him in the face. It seems so cliche, but it's still funny. And the fact that he does it 3 times, it's funny. But the better part is actually when everybody's leaving and he goes over to try to bang open that little window thing. The way he tries to open that and hits his head and looks through it. It's just perfect.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's the funniest part of the whole scene.
And nobody else could do that the way he did it. Another little gag that I noticed.
Anybody can do the big ones. It's one thing to do the big ones with the boards or whatever, but the attention to detail or the little subtle thing when it hits him in the head.
Yep. I didn't notice until this one. Did you ever notice when they're at the table and they're going to pray? Eddie doesn't know what to do with his hand. He can't figure out how to pray.
No, he does here's the steeple, and then look in the. He does that thing. That's what he's doing. He's doing the people in the church.
At that same scene, I noticed again too. I've seen this before, but it clicked more here. Ellen flicks her food off her fork behind her, and then pretends to eat like it's on a fork.
Yeah.
And then and you already mentioned earlier, I love when because nobody can relate more than me to getting frustrated and being stupid and over the top. When he beats Santa and the reindeer and he karate chops him,
Punches Santa in the face.
I know.
That's
And I
creepy.
love it. He like holds him by the head with the one hand.
Right.
And then so those are the ones I had written down. There's so many more, but those just as far as the physical comedy of Chevy Chase is just second to none. And this movie is just fantastic. So
I had written down anything with Aunt Bethany. Is the house on fire, Clark?
That's one of my favorite lines I have for later.
Is Rusty still in the Navy?
Don't throw me down, Clark.
This house is bigger than your old one.
I love riding in cars.
Yes, that's every line by Aunt Bethany right there.
She's just the best.
Well, and then there's the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, I know, but that first part
and
there.
Grace, she passed away 30 years ago.
Well, and that's the great thing about her is this movie is really awesome, and then she like just kicks it in another like it's just
bringing her and Lewis
coming.
in because you're used to the other parents.
Hilarious too.
But Lewis and her give it another dimension,
right?
Bring in the old people.
Oh.
Is that the only one you had there, Pete?
Did you have any others, Pete?
Well, I also had written down the ladder scene that just as you had described it, that whole thing. That's where I start rolling every time. I don't know. I could have just every single scene from the movie. Of course, you can't forget the in the mall at the.
Yeah, well, I have that down. You're getting into.
Can I take
that's more of a scene, yeah.
Yeah, I guess favorite gag and scene, the whole thing. I don't know.
Right.
But you know what I had as favorite gag? The one I can remember one time when I was watching it, I just started laughing so hard for about 10 minutes straight. But it's where he forgets the shovel at the beginning when they're about to cut down the tree. Dad, did you bring the shovel? Boom.
And then they don't show you taking him out of that tree on the car.
Show the tree that's rooted out.
Well, so I don't know if we want to do this right now. I have several questions about that scene. Questions you probably shouldn't ask, but
go ahead.
I just want to throw them out. So I love that opening scene. I love the car and all the all the stuff with the guys in the trucks and everything. But the first question is, okay, so they live in Chicago. You're going to a tree farm. They're in the mountains.
Right.
I mean, Illinois doesn't have mountains like that.
No.
We talked about that a little bit last
episode.
Maybe
go way north, but they're not that far. Right. So that doesn't add up.
Breckenridge, Colorado is where it's filmed.
I love the stuff with the truck and the semi and everything, but I think it's funny how the truck and Clark are like speeding. Like they are going really fast, passenger. And somehow this giant semi is going even faster than them, so fast that he's going to pass them. That was a question. There's no
now
shovel.
You're overthinking it now.
I know, but they dug this tree out of the ground by hand. No, that doesn't work either.
Right, that's why it's funny.
And when he pulls over underneath the log truck, which I love that part, but the truck's so far ahead of him by that point, it's like, okay, you don't see the truck there, but it's whatever. I love it.
So
it shows how stupid the scene is, but it's still way funny.
It's like a cartoon. You can't. I
know it is like a cartoon.
Later in the movie, when Eddie's there in the living room the first time, and he goes, "Is that a real tree, Clark?" He goes, "Yeah, dug it out of the ground myself."
Yeah.
It's all worth it for that line right there. Oh, before we move on, one more gag. I love in that scene where Eddie is looking at everything and he touches the little like helicopter type. What is that little thing? The little wood thing, and he tries to swing it, and it all just falls apart.
It just falls apart.
And then Clark tries to put it together, and he can't. And it just gives up, and that's good stuff.
So my favorite gag of the whole movie is not the ladder scene outside. It's the attic ladder. It kills me every time he pulls the chain and that thing comes down and hits him square in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets me every time. I laugh so hard. And then at the end of the scene, when he's sitting on the ladder watching the movies, and Ellen grabs it, and you just see him disappear. I love that attic.
Those
ladder.
two are
my parents had
every time.
Yeah,
the house that my parents had, it had an attic ladder like that, and so we would make that joke just about every time we had to go up there.
So
but you know,
one of my other gags that I loved is in the opening credits. The animated part was Santa, and he's got to get out of the house quick. So he looks up, he sees the open skylight. Why would you have an open skylight in the winter? But anyway, he sees the open skylight and he bounces on the couch to go out the skylight, but he goes through the roof of the house. It just sets up the movie so perfect.
But it does, because at the end of the movie, that's how bad the house is in. That's
Right.
how bad a shape it's in. So it's
Yep.
quite fitting.
I
wrote that just to at the end of the movie. This poor house, man, it is just calamity.
well, here's another
it's
gag.
like hard
that,
to watch how bad it gets. Just
when he's
destroyed.
hugging his dad and he just spills the eggnog and it just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah,
He
at that
doesn't
point, yeah.
So the one other one I had is in the saucer scene, where he coats his saucer and that stuff. In that scene, how his how he goes through drifts instead of over them.
Yes.
He's going so fast
Right.
that it just goes right through him. I think that's such a perfect little gag that they have in there. It's just wonderful.
Oh, and actually, speaking of that, I guess it could be kind of a gag. I love later on when Eddie's looking through the trash and he picks up the saucer and the whole bottom is missing, and it's because it's that's pretty funny too.
Right. So let's go into favorite scenes of the movie.
Yes.
Who wants to take this one?
I have three that they're all great, but I have three I'm going to mention.
Yeah.
The one is the this one might not be one you'd think of. I love the scene where the parents show up, and this is where some of that direction comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with the doorbell ringing, and if you're not paying attention, my wife hadn't noticed this until I pointed out to her after many times. The doorbell rings normal, but it rings 4 times, and every time it gets more ominous and deeper.
Yeah,
and
slower and slower.
That is such an awesome touch, and it's so funny. And each time it rings, they show somebody's face, and they look concerned. And the back and forth is just great. But then when they all come in, I love the manic of it, where the camera's just circling around, and it's so real, because this is how my family would be too. Everybody's just talking and nobody's listening to each other, and it's just nonstop and hugging and taking coats. And then one of my favorite lines of the movie is in there where the one mom asks Rusty to rub her corn, and then she goes, and I'll give Audrey a quarter too, Audrey.
Oh boy, a whole quarter.
Courtney and I say that one back and forth to each other all the time.
That scene, I love it because it shows how it's just the contrast between how excited Clark is to try to put together this great family Christmas, but then you can tell, everybody's a little bit leery of it. And the way everybody comes in, they're happy, but yet it's sad, or not sad, but just like scary. And then even Clark, who's the one who wants all this, another one of my lines that I love is he says, I'm going to go out and park the cars and I'll be outside for the season. And that's right off the bat. You realize, okay, so Clark wants this more than anybody, but he's admitting right there, this is not going to maybe work out the way that he envisioned it, and he's a little bit scared.
That's
I love that scene.
That gets back to where we talked about John Hughes, and I know that John Hughes wasn't a director, he was a writer, but where the John Hughes movies portray perfectly regular family life and what normal people go through, and there's just nobody better at it. I can't think of any other director that could do that.
And he didn't direct that scene, like you said, but that's what I love about it. It just seems so much like I can just relate to that. And as a kid and an adult, just the kids being there, and they're all worried about the grandparents. And
he probably had a lot of say in it, even if he didn't direct it. And so it was probably his idea, for all we know.
I'm not sure, because I read a quote of his too, where he they changed his stories to make these, and he made a comment about these that basically they're nothing more than just Chevy Chase vehicles at this point. Like they've taken his story and just turned it into, because remember I said in the other one, the original Vacation was told as like from Rusty's point of view,
right?
Yes. And so he changed it.
That happens with all these movies, though. That happens with any movie that's based on a written story.
I know. I'm just saying I don't think that they probably match his original story all that much. Why don't we go back and forth? That was my first scene. Somebody else, and then we'll see. That way I don't hog the scenes. So one of you guys go next.
Well, I had two that were my favorite, and it's nothing. We've mentioned all of my favorites already, I think, but I had the ladder scene, and I had the scene in the attic, and then I had the whole. Actually, I did have three written down. The Aunt Bethany, the whole table, the Christmas
She's so good.
dinner, that whole scene was just fantastic. And then it's like Uncle Lewis is like, "Hey, Clock, as long as you're not doing anything constructive,"
Get
and
my
he's like,
stogie.
he's sweeping up the mess off the kitchen floor, and it just doesn't matter. But
Do anything else, Uncle Lewis? What about you, Gib?
anyway,
Well, my favorite scene in the entire movie is the lingerie counter scene.
I knew that's what you were going to say. That's one of
Yeah,
mine too.
yeah.
So it's about 30 seconds of perfect comedy from Chevy Chase,
It's more than
where
30
he
seconds.
just keeps putting all these, messing up all these terms. So he had, I'm just smelling, smiling, I'm blousing, browsing. He's got hooter, hotter, nipply, nippy, adultery, adulthood, and
A log,
his
you a log,
laugh-
not that kind of log.
You're log.
Right.
Not in the sense that you think I said
I
it.
don't have a log. You know, if I had a log, not in the sense that you thought I said I did. But his laugh when she asked him if she could take something out for him,
Yes.
it makes me tear up and roll every
He just
time.
gives up at that point.
Yeah, and he's just uncontrollable laughter. And then the end of the scene when he says, "'Tis the season to be merry," and she says, "Well, that's my name," and he says,
Shit.
No shit.
I mean, it's a perfect scene. And then what I also like about it, then they cut to Russ kind of looking for him, and the look on Russ's face of like, of course Dad is with a hot chick and he's hitting on her, you know, kind of reminiscent of the
Like, here we go
scene.
again.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Pool
that
scene.
ties in. I just read a thing today about how they cast Johnny Galecki, and the director just knew he was the right one. Because even though he's a little younger, they thought that he played like the sense of humor perfectly, where he could play off of Chevy Chase so well, and like his reactions were so mature and well done for the humor. And that scene is a great example of how he just smiles at him, and it is, he's great at it.
He had like that right amount of sarcasm at times.
That's
It was so good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I in that scene too. Oh crap! Here we go. Somebody say something.
Okay.
Actually, I'll come back to that if I think of it.
I could play like dead air music here.
I know. You mentioned the attic scene, Pete. That was one of my two other ones that I wrote down, and that scene just gets me every time, because that scene's not, it's funny at first, but the whole nostalgia part where he's watching and a lot of people that know me know that, that is exactly how I act and how I am, and I love that. I would watch those videos. I would sit and cry at them. I would stop everything I'm doing to watch them. I just love it. And the thing that makes it even better is the Ray Charles song that's playing in the background. Yep. And it just gives it this great feel. And I love Christmas music too. And so I own like all the great Christmas songs that I want to have. You can't find that like on any streaming services. Like Ray Charles, I don't know if it's him or that song, but like you can't add it to Spotify or Amazon.
That's amazing.
Really?
So last year, we found on eBay the actual Christmas Vacation CD soundtrack, which I don't even listen to CDs anymore, but well, actually now
you can rip it. Right.
No, well, that's what we did. So it was almost $40, and there was one left, and Kim's like, "You got to buy it," and I did. I bought it just for that one song. Although it's actually fun to listen to because it has clips from the movie, and there's a lot of other good songs too. So it's totally worth it. But the main reason I bought it was just to get that song, which ties that scene together so well. I remembered what I was going to say about the other scene at the lingerie department too.
Yeah.
All that stuff you mentioned that he said, all those mix-ups, you just read that on a page. We were talking about this the other day, me and my brother, and we were talking about Caddyshack and like how great the actors are. Those things, you read them on a script, they're probably not that funny. But the
No.
way Chevy Chase says them and his facial expressions and the way that
Oh,
he
yes.
laughs, reacts, that's what sells it. And that's why
Yeah.
a comedic actor needs more credit.
Well, I'm
Because
guessing that
that's
a lot
not
of that
funny in
stuff
the
is
hands of some other people.
a
And
lot
in
of
the
that
hands
stuff
of
is probably
Chevy
not even in
Chase,
the script.
I know.
It's probably
So
just ad hoc.
that's what I was going to say. Sorry.
No,
I got one more scene if
Well,
somebody else can go. Though.
Well, one thing I want to get back to the attic scene before we get off it, but what what you got to love about it is that it just sucks you in emotionally, and
Yes.
right when you're just emotionally in it,
Yes.
then the floor falls out underneath.
That's perfect timing with and then there's one other funny part too. What I love too, you mentioned how he gets locked up there. So the first thing he does when he gets locked up there, Russ! He yells for Rusty. He doesn't yell, he doesn't try to get out, he doesn't yell for his wife. He yells Russ.
It was the same thing with the squirrel scene.
I know, I love
Right
how he's
away,
always
he yells,
talking.
he yells
He's
for
always
Russ.
trying to
He's
get
like, Rusty, go get my hammer.
That's great.
So I'll just mention my other favorite scene, and again, I'll go over it when we get to our favorite lines. But it's the freak out scene. It's the same thing in Vacation. My favorite scene from that one is the freak out in the car, and my second favorite in this movie is his freak out when he gets his Jelly of the Month Club membership.
Oh yeah,
But I have one more scene if you guys are done with scenes.
go for it.
This one's actually one too and it's kind of one that really hit me more this time. It's more of a kind of emotional, not a funny scene. So after the lights don't turn on and he freaks out, there is a scene where they play Silent Night, and so it's got this nice Christmas classic playing, and they show everybody sleeping or struggling to sleep. Audrey's mad because Rusty's got her arm around her and she's shoving him off. The one grandpa's reading a sassy magazine. The other one's staring at Cindy Crawford on the ceiling.
It's Carrie Otis, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
And there's no dialogue. It's just showing all this kind of the calm house at this point, but also a struggle. But then at the end of it, you got that giant moon, and it's this beautiful night, and Clark is outside on the ladder by himself, checking every single bulb, and it just hit me. I just love that. He's trying so hard, and in the way, again, the direction with the movie, with the song and everything, the way it's put together makes that scene really emotional. And not, this movie is hilarious, but it has that perfect balance with the family emotion stuff too.
It has a lot of heart. It really does. It has this man trying to bring his family together. Yeah.
All right, that was my last scene that I wrote. I mean, obviously they're all great, but that was the last one I had prepared.
Beauty. All right. Well, if we haven't said all of them already, now we have a section that is just dedicated to our favorite lines of the movie. Who would like to kick this one off?
We've had. I can go. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 5 written down.
And we've only said one. We haven't said yet. So
yeah, we've only said one of mine that I can count here. And the one that we've talked about is I just had Clark's tirade written down that you talked about. The other one,
and I wrote down the no shit line, but I actually said, I mean, it's that whole scene.
Yeah,
the Gifford.
It's the whole thing,
right? You serious, Clark?
That's one of the greatest lines because you can use it over and over in everyday life.
Yeah,
and people know what you're saying too.
Right.
And then I had eat my rubber.
Red liver lips.
I think Dad is burn dust or burn rubber, eat my dust.
Right.
Anyway, and then the other one I had was it's not going in our yard, Russ. It's going in our living room.
That's a great one. Oh, and then I forgot. I didn't write down, but in that same part there, when he's talking to the neighbors and he says, "Bend over and I'll show you." And I wasn't talking to you.
Yes.
That's a great one too.
Oh,
I use that line.
Every line is perfect. You could have the whole script on this one.
Bend over and I'll show you. Yeah.
That's it. The only other one, I mean, you said it, and we could go on and on, but the one that hasn't been said yet, because I love it, it's the delivery of it. When he ends up under the log truck in the first scene, and Ellen says, "You're stuck under a truck," and he goes, "Do you honestly think I don't know that?" And the way he says that is just, that's so funny.
So
Again,
I've
they
got
just capture the married couple thing perfectly too.
right.
Yes.
The
Oh
way
yeah, they're
they-
great again. We talked about that in the other one, but they are just great as a couple.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of the movie, when they're looking for the tree, and Audrey is, slowly freezing to death, and Ellen says Audrey's is frozen from the waist down. Clark says it's all part of the experience, honey.
Yep, that's a great. Which is just like another callback. Are you happy now, Clark? She's deaf.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun anyway.
Well, it was fun anyway, right? I think we talked about the plate in his head with revved up the microwave. That is a great one.
Not that part.
The scene that I think reminds all three of us of Jamie Norgard because of his Halloween costume one year. The shitter was full.
Nobody said that. Actually, that's the most obvious one.
And Clark looks at Ellen and goes, "Did you check our shitters, honey?"
That's great.
We covered the house. Is your house on fire? One of my favorite lines is when
it's on 5 o'clock.
is when Aunt Bethany, they finally get her in the house, and they take her coat off. Why don't you go in and say hi to everybody? And Cousin Eddie comes up to Rusty, and he goes, "Let's go find your sister." It's so creepy. I mean, what are you gonna do when you find it?
He does that perfectly, though. I mean,
and he fake hits him in the gut. Oh, it's so creepy.
I have one more line too. I have it in my things I didn't notice before, but I can say it here when you're done. I just want to remember that.
So when they're cutting the turkey, and Eddie says, "Save the neck for me, Clark."
Oh, that's another good one. I say that all the time.
Again, Pete, with Aunt Bethany, her line I use all the time. It's a funny squeaky sound.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's about as useful as "Are you serious, Clark?"
And then when the squirrel finally leaves the house, he opens the door and it jumps on Marco. Gone.
Yeah. Well, you just reminded me though, one I could have written down that also has had me laughing hysterically. You couldn't hear a dump truck driving through a nitroglycerin plant.
So,
oh my God, this is as fun as watching it.
My second favorite
This
scene
podcast is just as good.
These are the 23 terms in order that Clark refers to Mr. Shirley as.
We're gonna have to put this as
we've already said
we've said
it's okay.
Cheap, lying, no good, rotten, flushing, low life, snake licking, dirt eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood sucking, dog kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat ass, bug eyed, stiff legged, spotty lipped, worm headed sack of monkey shit.
He is. Don't forget that he is, because that was important.
I have that
the way he said that.
Those were the 23 terms. And then the last one I have written down, and I think I put this on my Facebook feed one time at Christmas. We're going to have the happiest Christmas since Bing Crosby tap danced with Danny F&K.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's all right. You could say it if you want. I just have to turn on the explicit thing.
So here is
a little checkbox.
That was your last one, right?
Yeah, that's the last one I'm going to mention.
This is a gag and a line in a really underrated scene, I think, that goes missing. So I love the scene where Clark and Eddie go shopping, and all he's getting is dog food. And when he puts the light bulbs on, and then the dog food on top of the light bulbs, that's a gag that shouldn't go unstated. But in that scene, Eddie out of nowhere goes, "Your company kill off all those people in India a couple of years ago?" And Clark goes, "No, we missed out on that one."
So remember when Eddie shows up after he lights the lights and he's introducing his family, he mentions our pride and joy, Snots. So in that scene, the only thing he puts in that cart, because they're talking about getting something for the kids, the only thing he puts in that cart is dog food. Right. He puts 5 50-pound bags of dog food,
and different kinds of dog food too,
and canned. Yeah. So I mean, it goes back to his. He cares about that dog more than he does his own kids.
Yeah.
And one other thing I was going to mention, I love Ellen's blouse. And I've tried.
That is
Oh,
a
yeah.
very interesting blouse. That's another thing that should
Yeah.
be mentioned about the movie.
I've tried to find it online because Courtney's like, if you can find it, I'll wear it for Christmas.
Well,
but
that'd
I
be
can't
great
find
Christmas.
that blouse. I
Tim
love
has
that.
mentioned that blouse before.
One other gag I had written down was the cat as a present, and I love how it like jumps around in his hand.
Again, he just sells it that there's a cat in there, and it looks so perfectly real and awesome.
Oh my God. Anyway, man, we could go on for hours and hours, but what do you think, guys? You got more, or should we wrap it up?
Well, I have final thoughts.
I did have one other thing. Did you guys? I think you mentioned a couple times, but was there anything else you noticed this time around that you hadn't noticed in the past?
Oh, let me just double check. Oh, well, here's actually no. Well, I mentioned how I like the direction of it.
Mhm.
I mentioned the scene where they all come into the house for the first time, but there's other parts too where it cuts back and forth with the neighbors, especially. And one of the best points where that happens is where the lights are going on and off because they find the switch, but they don't realize. And every time it flashes back to the neighbors and the guy falls down the stairs or they drop
Right.
something, and it's just so seamlessly done. And then one other moment where that happens is where he's up watching in the attic. We've talked about this a lot, but I love how before we get to that part, they show them driving in. They show them walking in with all the gifts. It looks all nice and happy and Christmassy. And it just kind of builds up to that point where Ellen pulls it down. And then it's just, the timing is perfect when he falls and how funny that is. And then last one that I noticed, I've seen this before, but it didn't really register. I mean, everybody knows, I think, about the dickie he wears under his shirt.
Yep.
Yes.
But in the pool scene, in the dream, he's got his T-shirt tucked into his swimming trunks.
Yeah, all the way through his Speedo.
So that kind of just stood out at this time that I've seen it, but I thought that was funny too.
Yep.
Did you have anything you noticed?
I wrote it down. I noticed it before, but it always seemed to me that the grandparents got there awfully early. Like I didn't. Do you guys
I've noticed it.
Well, I love that because
but if you think about it, they're watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, as because they're all falling asleep after they'd all get. And so,
but I think that's a different parade, because they show the little advent calendar. It's December 14th when he goes to work, and they come after that. So they're not there until at least like December 15, 16 or something. So they're there for about a week before Christmas.
I counted it as 5 days for the grandparents, and Eddie shows up the night after the grandparents do. So they were there for 5 days, and Eddie's family was there for 4. And he's taking the RV with him when he leaves here next month. So, that was the one thing I kind of marked down. Is I just thought it was weird how long they were there.
Do you guys have any final thoughts on the movie that you want to share then? I got just a little I wrote here, but
just to say that I think this is the movie that I am pretty sure I've seen more than any other movie in my entire life.
Yes.
It's got to be.
And I've got no regrets about it. And I'll watch it many, many more times every single year, probably at least twice a year.
Yeah. So I don't remember loving this movie I saw it in the movie theater. I don't remember loving it or thinking this is a classic. I liked it. I mean, I love the vacation movies, but it's for whatever reason, it took a few showings to where it really built. And I mean, so it's obviously one of my all-time favorite movies now. And I love that my family loves it. It's taken on a whole new life now as an adult with them. So we watch it every year. It's probably the most family-friendly of all the movies too. So that's another thing I like about this one. Even though they all have their moments where they can be.
Well, this one has no nudity, but I think there's more swearing in this one than any of the other ones.
I don't think there's that much. I just think the content, especially though, along with that though, because like we watched it with our kids when they're pretty young, and I mean it's not that bad. So I like that it's the most family oriented because it brings in the extended family. Like the original Vacation is obviously a great family movie as far as like showing the family,
Right.
but this one goes another step beyond that. So I love that it's family friendly, but like you said, but it still has that bite. It still has what it needs to be hilarious and be funny to a kid and an adult, and not just cheesy or stupid.
It
So I don't
perfectly
know why I maybe didn't love it at first, but I love it now, and I have for many, many years. And so
it perfectly encapsulates what I think we probably all feel around the holidays, which is part joy and part dread, right? I mean, it
Well,
really
especially now
does.
that you're older.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Yeah.
well, when it's all over with, you're like, you breathe that sigh of relief, and it's like, all right, now I can chill. But
Well, and I put up Christmas lights every year, and I want them to look great. They're not to the extent of his, but I look really hard to do that, and I get frustrated when something doesn't work. And it's just like with the first Vacation too, where it's that feeling of you want to do something that you think is going to be great for everybody, and you want it to be perfect, and you build up things in your head, and you try to make them last, and it never really goes that way. So it just, again, you can just totally relate to that. It's just very real.
yeah.
Yes. Well said.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it up then. Don't forget to go on to Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast platform. Leave us a review. We've got a couple of actually that we can actually read. Give me 1 second here.
We got 2 new reviews, and we really, really appreciate the reviews, and they help a lot. So if you haven't yet left a review and you're listening to us, we would really appreciate it because it's fun and it makes it even more worthwhile. Obviously, we're having fun. We're having fun here, but it makes it even better.
Yeah. One person says, and this is Milt, says, in one episode, or I'm one episode in, and I'm hooked. So happy to hear your voices. I hope you keep this going for a long time. And another one says,
and we will. We got 40 years worth of stuff to go through.
and this is a woman that said she was totally into your Roadhouse episode. Never saw the movie, but the way you describe it sucked her into it. Keep up the good work. So
those Hooked on Phonics lessons are really coming along nicely, Pete.
There you go. Thank you. Well, if there's nothing else,
what do we got? What do we got coming? Are there any vacation movies left?
We have one left. Vegas Vacation. We took them in sequential order, and that's going to be a fun one. We're going to be discussing Las Vegas a little bit next time. So enjoy. Viva Las Vegas, and we'll give you a little Preacher Row. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
I got to go feed my gerbils.
Bye.
Don't forget the rubber sheets.
On that note.
No one's gonna comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your song is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Next time, tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.